Gbadamosi Adegoke Adelabu was a prominent figure in Ibadan politics and Western region before Nigeria's independence. He was a key founder of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, a political party that held lofty the torch of liberty.
All right, so thank you so much for staying with us. You're on to Morning Spring, and it's coming to you from Western Spring Television, where we say it as it is. You can watch us live on Star Times channel 190 on their DTT platform. Also check us out on all of our social media pages on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. It's at Western Spring Television. We have our guests joining us live in the studios this very morning, and they'll be reviewing the state of the nation, really from a security perspective. And that's because of that very unfortunate incident. And my guest just told us before coming on said that it has significant implications, really. But yesterday was a particularly dangerous one here in Nigeria, a deadly one, from Taraba to Benue to Plateau. There were deaths, across. Tens of people killed, the villages razed. But the most worrying one is that very unfortunate incident in Ogbaru local government of Anambra State, where a convoy of officials of the U.S. consulate was attacked and 4 lives were lost. I understand that some policemen were also abducted and the corpses of those who were killed were burnt. It's that bad. But Mr. Komi Ademiluye joins us live in the studios this morning. He's a former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Independent newspapers, also a policy analyst. Thanks so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Well, so, tell me, what do you make, we seem to be getting used, quite unfortunate too, because we are getting numbed by the numbers. So 10 killed, we don't see any outreach, no reaction as such again. But yesterday, from Taraba to Benue to Plateau, there were killings. And then late in the evening, we got news that a convoy of officials of the U.S. consulate were attacked. 4 were killed, 2 mobile policemen, 2 staff. How does that come to you?
Well, it comes to me as the chickens coming home to roost. See, an alternative reality has been constructed in this country. If you listen to the government's official spokesperson, they're not living in the same reality that you and I. I'll give you an example before I go to whatever happened in Ogbaru, which I hope is not true. 2 days ago, I was watching on the cable networks the president of Kenya, William Ruto. I was moved. I haven't been impressed like that for years, Maybe it's my age, I've seen so much. But Ruto tendered an unreserved apology. He accepted responsibility as the president and commander-in-chief for about 200 people starving to death. He said the government, I saw it, I'm quoting verbatim as if I'm studying for an exam, said the government should have been proactive, they should have been preemptive. His apology, I couldn't believe it. I thought he went too far. He was there. I watched it live on cable network. He said that heads will have to roll. He actually used that word. That heads, I wish you can, it's on YouTube, that heads will have to roll, and that he as president accepts responsibility, and he used the word that I am ashamed of myself. He didn't blame a previous government. He didn't blame one Babalawo.
And that's for an incident where religious are there and stuff today. Is that what you're referring to?
It wasn't that somebody killed them. They voluntarily starved themselves to death. But the
following one religious leader.
Following one religious, but he
took responsibility.
He emphasized, I watched it live, it's on YouTube, he emphasized it that not once, but 3 times. And he actually used the word that I am ashamed of myself. How long has he been president? Now, when these people create alternative realities, which is, somebody was saying, Gabashe was saying that inflation is not a Nigerian phenomenon, it's worldwide. This is the highest inflation rate in 17 years. It's one of the worst since independence. And this is the alternative, everybody's in, These are now, to go to Ogbaru, or whatever it is called,
Ogbaru,
there are questions that have to be asked. First of all, what is the level of protection that you give to diplomatic convoys? That question has to be asked. See, one of the problems we have in Nigeria, which I hope the incoming administration will have the political will as well as the good sense to tackle it, is that the country must have special forces. I don't know, even if you were not fighting insurgency and banditry, are there many countries in the world, not to mention a country of this size and complexity, that do not have special forces? I mean, you're supposed to have special forces, for example, if you have convoys of diplomats, exposed people, you know, all kinds of things. These people are trained, even the driver. You see, you start with the driver, which we had in the First Republic. The driver driving the convoy, the envoy, or whatever you call it, and what's his training? Has he been trained in defensive driving? That's where you start from now. During the First Republic, the drivers of political exposed people were being sent to Baden-Württemberg in Germany. Unfortunately, the coup came because they were supposed to replicate the same thing just outside Benin. Yeah, they were supposed to, you know, it's still there. It's a special training school for people driving, politically exposed people, businessmen, you know, that kind of. It's a shame because they had already had expropriation, and the Midwestern region had given them land just a few kilometers outside Benin. It would have been a fantastic place. People have been sending drivers from all over West Africa, even all over Central Africa.
So, I mean, drivers driving politically exposed persons and VIPs need to have a special skill.
You know, the person driving a convoy of people from a foreign mission is not the same person driving your chief executive officer. He should have gone through all kinds of specialized training in defensive training. Even you know, this is a specialized job now, and his life is exposed and so on. But he must know certain things about defensive driving, responding to emergency situation, which I don't expect the driver of Korokwe in Agubelewo to know. So you have to ask questions from that start. What was the level of protection given? And then, because of the people who create alternative realities, you have already denied that you have a worsening security situation. So when people issue travel advisories, you say they are demarketing your country. It's like the chickens coming home to roost. You don't have specially trained drivers. We don't know the kind of vehicles they are using, whether it's...
Well, you know, Mr. Demile, I mean, it's strange to me because they've come here a couple of times. They come here regularly. When they come to Osun for their engagements, I mean, for their media engagements, I'm with us here. And I've seen the kind of vehicles they use. Perhaps maybe it's for senior officials. Maybe these were middle-ranking officials. I know that they drive Ford, mostly bulletproof vehicles.
That's good.
With heavy security, mobile policemen attached. So I'm surprised that these one happened. So that's what I'm saying. Perhaps the ones that were attacked were not a senior, you know, officials.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they were not the senior officials. And somebody has to accept responsibility for that, because there must be a special corps that protects the diplomatic community directly and indirectly.
So what if they are Nigerians just working for the U.S. consulate?
Even if they are Nigerians, even if we have a responsibility as much as American citizens working for the consulate. Because a Nigerian working for any consulate is exposed to danger on an hourly basis. Even, I mean, look at, for example, in court yesterday, they were talking about witness protection for somebody giving evidence in
Abba Kyari's case.
For Abba Kyari's case. The person who is working for a consular in a country that is facing a deteriorating situation is deserving of the same protection round the clock. They're putting their lives on the line now. It doesn't matter whether they're American citizens or not. And it is in dereliction of duty for the Nigerian government not to have provided the kind of preemptive mechanism in terms of the vehicle, the driver of the vehicle, the special protection unit that they need. We all know the situation in Anambra. He didn't know about the situation in Anambra last year, 6 months ago. That means that there was dereliction. That's why I went back to Ruto. That I'm looking forward to a government in this country that would take things in the way that Ruto did. I was so impressed watching him. you're going to see the response now to what happened yesterday. It's going to be the same alternative reality mendacity we are used to. They're going to shift the blame on all kinds of people. We're never going to see anybody as contrite as Ruto was. I enjoy every Nigerian who cares to go to YouTube and watch the statement by the president of Kenya. You will almost be in tears. That he was statesman-like. That yes, I accept responsibility. I'm ashamed of. He actually used the word, I'm ashamed of myself. You get what I mean? When are that the kind of words that people like Garba Shehu use? And the fact of the matter is that there ought to be an inquiry to this thing, because these are not the only Nigerians or people working in consulates and stuff. And we're in for the long run. This situation is not going to disappear when a new government is brought into place in 12 days' time. It's not. You get what I mean? So we've got to ask ourselves, what is the revamp? What are the special forces that have to be induced, trained, and retrained and stuff? But this is a very disgraceful situation, because so now when people talk about travel advisories, be careful. People will now come out and say they are demarketing their country and stuff. But if somebody issues a travel advisory now, and unfortunately it's our own citizens who have been killed, we don't know what benefits these people are going to get from the people they were working for. But the Nigerian citizens, Nigerian children who are now fatherless or motherless or whatever. And I think we should try and take life a little bit more seriously. But there ought to be a thorough inquiry into this thing, because there was dereliction of duty. There's no doubt about that. You have to ask yourself, what were the intelligence sources? I mean, if you're having people who are exposed, and these people are as exposed as the president, traveling in an obscure place, in a volatile place like Anambra, you have to ask yourself, what was the intelligence gathering? Was there any reconnaissance, any advanced movements? This whole thing is disgraceful, because when you look at 20% of the budget of this country is going into security. In whatever way you define security. 20% is a lot in a country with dilapidated hospitals and schools, in which medical tourism alone takes about $1 billion United States dollars, probably an underestimate a year, in which we don't even know how much money is being spent on schools and universities abroad. So 20%. Now, if this 20% is sensibly used, you say, okay, it's not the fault of the government. They didn't induce all this security. But the fact of the matter is that it is now obvious that the next government must make an inquiry into the efficacy of the spending that you have been doing. It's obvious that you're not spending this money properly or judiciously. It's obvious that we have to have a serious line-by-line budget and audit of this budget. But what happened there is unbefitting of a country of this size, of the kind of money we send on security. And I don't know what the reactions of the Americans are going to be. But much more important is that the side effect, you see, when all these people create all this alternative reality, killing 4 people on the same day and burning their bodies, right? It affects you and I. It affects the bond pricing. It affects the prices that we're paying, our loan repayments. It affects the credit risk analysis of somebody determining the insurance on containers being sent to Nigeria. And somebody's sitting, somebody's working in a place in London, in Frankfurt, in New York, in Paris, in Tokyo. He's paid to do credit risk on the insurance, in their shipping to Nigeria. That's why he earns a salary at the end of the month, right? He's going to have to factor in things like this in doing his credit risk, because no two countries have the same credit risk now. That means that the insurance you are going to pay on that container to Nigeria might turn out to be more expensive than the insurance you are paying on the same container to Lome or Takoradi or whatever. There are consequences that you can say, don't concern me with whatever they're killing people. But you and I are paying prices now, because it's our taxes that go into loan repayments. We are consumers who want to buy sardine or whatever. That sardine is not made in Nigeria, so we're paying for the cost of freight and insurance. It's a disgraceful situation, and I think that you have to have a complete overhaul of the internal security framework and mechanism. And much more important, we have to have a government that does not live in denial.
Something I'd like you to love, just before Topway comes in, the police command confirmed the incident yesterday through Ikenga Tochukwu, the spokesperson of the police, and he said those who were killed were two staff of the consulate and two mobile police operatives, and he said that no U.S. citizen was in the convoy. But he said, and I quote now, that the command, while reacting to the situation, regrets that a convoy of such or any related will enter the state without recourse to the police in the area of or any security agency, assure that the battle against insurgents in the state is focused and is to remain sustained until such a time security stability is fully restored. I mean, they're saying that they find
the blame to the consulate.
Yeah, saying
is that what a responsible security mechanism should be doing?
You do not.
Of course, the consulate ought to provide answers as to what liaison they had with the policing system before their people got into. But this one is like just shifting the whole blame. No, you should. Yeah, we'll liaise with the consulate and then work out what went wrong. But this one is like washing your hands on the matter. It's disgraceful. What kind of policing system is that? And I find it unacceptable because it's obvious you're passing the buck and you're saying, oh, okay, I've got nothing to do.
I mean, that they find it absurd that such a convoy is coming in and there was no recourse, no information to the state.
Well, that was wrong, actually. I mean, well, we have to hear from the consulate itself. I mean, because obviously, the times are so difficult and perilous that they ought to have been, even before they left anywhere, they ought to have linked up with the Anambra State Police Command. So they have a point there. But pushing it out in this way, it's a bit offensive. It's offensive to the families of the people who have died. And it also doesn't look too good in terms of the diplomatic framework of Nigeria's relationships with all these people.
Well,
I think they should train their spokespeople to be more discreet in their use of language. I mean, you can't just say that you are the spokesperson of an important organization and you just go on air in front of a microphone and say things that could have very devastating repercussions to even the country's relationship with other countries. I mean, this goes to show you, one, again, the problem of this country, the issue of the method of recruitment and selection, and then the issue of training. I don't see how any policing, any body, whether it's a manufacturing company, a police force, army, whatever it is, can just come and make this kind of insensitive statement just like that. It shows that there's a defect in the method of recruitment and selection, and there's something wrong about the training and the way they are asked to present information. It's disgraceful.
Okay.
All right. Still on the security issue, having a retired Army general as our president, and with one of his key promises being fixing Nigeria's security challenges, because that was one of his, promises aside fighting corruption. Now, on Business Day about a year ago, it says at least 54,948 people have been killed in Nigeria due to violent acts within 7 years. That's from May 2015 to May 2022 under the presidency. What are your thoughts on this? Because on an average, about 21 people die daily under the Buhari administration. Comparing it to the US, where they put premium on people's lives. How do you think this administration has fared so far?
I like the way you started, actually. And I think I was so fascinated with the way you started. I think I'll zero in on that. I think there was a mistake, that the fact that somebody is a general. That was how a lot of people voted in 2015. I mean, I voted for Buhari with great enthusiasm in 2015. And, that was how the mind the general is going to start. But I think that those are part of it. It's an historical sequence that people have to learn and that has bearings for the next administration. 69 years ago, the best army in the world, the French army was the best army in the world in 1954, was destroyed at Dien Bien Phu in Vietnam. And the lesson people who led the best army in the world faced an army of ragtag peasants, lightly armed, some of them with bows and arrows. But what is of interest in this discussion is the person who led the Vietnamese army in Dien Bien Phu. Nguyen Van Gior who died about 5 years ago at the age of about 103 or something. He was a lawyer. He wasn't a judge. He didn't spend one day what do you call it, in a military academy. He was a lawyer who got fed up and, joined the resistance to colonialism. One of the things is that we should have learned now is that we're talking about brains over brawn now. And this obsession, because a new administration is going to come into play in 12 days' time, and I'm not expecting any revolutionary acts. Yeah, I'm not disappointed. We don't expect much. But this obsession, National Security Advisor must be a retired militarist. I wish they could just throw this thing away. How many National Security Advisors in the United States have you seen who are retired generals or even retired majors? You get what I mean? I wish you could have some new thinking on Minister of Defense. Okay, Minister of Defense is a retired Major General or whatever it is. What difference has that made? I wish you can have a fresh perspective that this thing is now about brains, about the very network of the strategic imperative of what you are doing. First of all, defining what the problem is and the multiplicity of responses to the problem. Not saying I'm a general, because it is obvious that a lot of the mindset we have today is mindset that are formed in a different era, in conventional warfare. We're dealing now with a different situation. That's what the French couldn't cope with in Dien Bien Phu in 1954. They had to face a situation of people who knew a terrain, and the French army was trained to fight conventional warfare. Nguyen Van Giop developed what changed the course of warfare forever, a different way of fighting that was unconventional. So all these people who had gone to all these fancy military academies, they didn't know what they were faced with. It's the same thing in Nigeria. We're facing a different situation, not the situation you were trained in at West Point or whatever it was in England. You have to develop a new type of thinking, a new type of personnel. And we have to develop special forces. We don't have special forces in Nigeria. We should by now have special forces that can fight in different terrains under different conditions. Like if you go to somewhere like the United Kingdom, the Highland Forces, nobody hears of the Highland Forces, But the Highland Forces are in a remote part of Scotland. They are specifically trained to fight in mountains. You get what I mean? This is just about 3,000 of them, but from the day they are recruited until the day they retire or move on to do other things, all they are ever learned, they are trained, retrained, they fight on the mountains. So if you attack the country, you drop people onto mountains. They can't fight on the sea. They can't fight in Oshogbo. You get what I mean? That's what but if you go and drop paratroopers on a mountain, that's what they were trained for. We must have those kind of special forces across the board to fight in different terrains under different conditions at night in swarms and stuff. You get what I mean? All this emphasis on, we're just going to be spending 20%. Okay, what if you get 54,000 people? It's probably an underestimate because I don't bank on any statistics in Nigeria. It's not going to get soon anytime. It's not going to get better anytime soon because the social and economic and political conditions that led to this, they're not going to fade away in one day because you've had a change of government. So what's going to be your response is now going to be that you must do a 10-year review and say that this thing did not work. We must have a different response now. And we must, you see, this is a problem, especially with the format that the outgoing people, of course, the lack of intellectual humility to accept. That's what Ruto did 2 days ago in Kenya. We were wrong. Something went wrong. I accept responsibility. I'm not a murderer. I didn't plan to kill 200 people, but we must now reboot and start all over again. And the incoming administration should take this opportunity and say, look, we're not blaming all this, blame Jonathan, blame Buhari. No, we're not blaming, but we learn the lessons of history. It's obvious that there has to be a review of the whole strategic framework. Otherwise, we continue like this. The country must develop special forces. It must develop a new way of thinking that this is not conventional warfare and look at what went wrong and be preemptive what went wrong, what is the quality of our intelligence services and that kind of thing. You get what I mean? I was surprised, for example, a long time ago when they declassified some papers, about, I think it was about 15 years ago. They declassified papers in the British government, or that were under the official secrets. And what impressed me as a Nigerian, was that I didn't know, but the equivalent of the DSS, the MI5, you cannot be recruited into the equivalent of the DSS unless you have a proficiency in chess. I didn't know that. I read that they declassified these papers and, under the 15, 20, 30, 70 year law. And then they said that it is either you are proficient in chess or you show the aptitude that within 6 months, 9 months, you will be able to play chess properly. Because they just saw it that intelligence, what we call DSS here, is based on strategic thinking, on being preemptive. So they said if you can't play chess or you show the capacity to be always having an increased level of proficiency, that why you are an intelligence officer. This was 50 years ago, And I thought I was in the editorial board meeting of a national newspaper. And we wrote an editorial on it, of course, nobody reads what you're writing. That maybe we should look at this, that even if they're not proficient in chess when they are recruited into DSS, that after because like chess, I don't play chess, I admire people who play, but it's a way of strategic thinking, like game theory and stuff. So I think it's quite important. These are the things that we should be incorporating and stop seeing all this security situation and just carrying AK-47 and that. We should start thinking at more like strategy, like game theory, like planning and preemptiveness, even going into the mind of the enemy. Because even after all, even a good lawyer has to go into the mind of the opposing counsel and see where it's coming from in order to demolish his position. The whole thing is wrong. We failed the country, and we can't go on like it because it's not going to get better. I mean, what happened in Anambra happened 2 days ago. Look at the massacre that occurred in Plateau and Benue. A whole village has been relocated in Plateau. I saw the governor-elect was on television yesterday.
Yeah.
And the governor, I can't remember his name, never knew anything, but he had to admit that he himself was the man has not been sworn, But what I want to see actually is a complete review, but much more important, that we move away from this presentation of information and the next administration at all levels recruit people who can explain things without trading blames and living in an alternative reality and not accepting responsibility. Because if you don't accept responsibility, nothing's going to change for the better. Whether it's as an individual, a community, if something goes wrong, even in this studio, you accept responsibility. Say, look, we invited the wrong person to come. You get what I mean? Or they didn't check the microphone. You don't blame somebody outside of this studio. You get what I mean? But things are really bad, and the first start to recognize that the strategy is wrong. There has to be a holistic review. And we have to look at personnel and stuff. And we should stop this delusion that it's brain, it's brawn over brain, that because somebody was in the armed forces, he should be Minister of Defense, he should be National Security. The world went beyond that.
Well, just to round up, perhaps I should just ask you, finally, before we let you go, you said it's beyond carrying AK-47 rifles. It's beyond, the brute force. Yeah. So, in your own opinion, moving forward now, what's the role of the NSA? I think statutorily over the years, we've had retired military officials heading the NSA. As some have said, if we're going to get it right in our security issues, we need to have a better management of the NSA in coordinating things. What should be the role? What should be? I'm
sorry I'm interrupting you. It's rude.
No problem.
It's because of time. I think we have to redefine the role of the NSA. It doesn't have to be. How many NSAs are generals in the United States, in the United Kingdom? You get what I mean? France. It doesn't have to be a military person. We're not talking about a strategist. somebody who understands the strategic imperative of a deteriorating security situation, who places a premium on intelligence gathering and preemptive moves rather than reacting after the horse has bolted. I think we have to move away from this obsession with the NSA has to be a military discipline. Like I said, probably, in my opinion, that's my opinion, the greatest, the most astute military mind of the last century, Nguyen Vuong Kyo, was a lawyer. He didn't spend one day in any military academy. But go and Google Dien Bien Phu. The military strategy he used to, he didn't defeat the French. He annihilated the best military in the world with peasants. You know, these people were wearing salubat, or what you call it, you know, with bows and arrows, light weapons. He changed the course of military warfare forever. It was 69 years. The man was a lawyer. So all this, your obsession with this, the retired general, this and that, you have to, you must have a rethink. Where's the empirical evidence that if your figures are like 54,000 people have been killed?
But so, you know, in a proper structure, does the military chiefs or do the military chiefs report to the NSA? What's actually the role? Does the NSA coordinate? Is that a line of reporting to the president, or the military have access to the president? You might explain.
Well, I mean, it depends from country to country.
Oh, okay.
But I think in the kind of situation we're faced with now, it should be collaborative.
Okay.
The NSA working with the military chiefs, reporting to the president and working with him. Hopefully, we'll have a president who pays attention to details and decide. I'm not saying you should micromanage, but paying attention to details, meaning that you see this as a desk job and not as a ceremonial job. I think the NSA, the function of the NSA, if we're going to be spending 20% of the budget sensibly, has to be redefined. Because whatever definition you have had about the NSA over the last 12 years, while this thing has just been deteriorating and deteriorating, you must have a review. Before you appoint the next NSA, which is bound to be in about 2-3 weeks' time, you must decide what is the function of the NSA, what is its strategic imperative, what is its relating function and reporting function with the army chiefs, and how do they work in collaboration. We cannot continue with the definition we've had in the last 10 years of the functions of the NSA. We're putting ourselves in harm's way, and it will get worse.
But does experience really not have a part to play in strategic combat, military combat?
Sorry?
Does experience not have a part to play?
Yeah, it does, right? But coordination is much more important. I mean, the person doesn't have to be somebody who has fought in a war or become a field marshal or something. I think what we're looking for now is somebody who can think strategically. It's not that he's supposed to have been involved in warfare. I mean, how many of these people themselves who were NSAs were actually involved in combat and stuff? I think we're now looking for a different kind of NSA, but I think the key point should be on intelligence gathering and on strategic perspectives and formations. A look at the causes and the effects of things and how to combat them. I don't think the last... I'm sorry, but you cannot do a strategic review and say that the NSAs we've had over the last 10, 12 years have been effective. You'll be living in an alternative reality, and you'll be shying away from a brutal, hard reality if you did that.
Well, I mean, so just to conclude, I also feel security goes beyond military warfare. So perhaps there's also food security that could also be part of what the NSA looks into. Of course. Like when we had the COVID-19 emergency. So it could be also be part of what the NSA coordinates.
Of course, because we have a deteriorating food situation in this country. I mean, if a basket of tomatoes is going for 53,000 in Ilorin, as a reputable news outlet said about a week ago, then if food security is part of it. You see, this is why you have to take a holistic system, because even the insurgents might be using disruption in the food chain to cause a crisis. So you have to look, you have 1,000,000% right. You have to look at it from a multidimensional perspective.
Well, we'd like to thank you most sincerely for joining us this morning once again, Mr. Komi Ademiluyi, former chairman, editorial board of the Daily Independent newspaper, as a policy analyst. We thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. It's very kind of you. Thank you, Dr.
So that's the show this morning. We'll be back here tomorrow for another edition of the program. Please do well to like us, like our page on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Is at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on those platforms as well. Femi Olanikwekun is my name. Good morning.
Thanks for joining us again this morning. I'm Temi Tokpe Ajijola Oluola. Have a nice day.